Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 301 of the Board Game Barrage podcast. I am your host, the Orange Tank Nealon, and with me are my co-hosts, Mark and Kellen, the green and red tanks. Hello, Mark.
Hey.
Hello, Kellen.
Hello. We are here with you, and we haven't been talking for an hour.
Yeah. We did not definitely just come off of recording the bonus episode.
Which, if you want to listen to it, you can just join our Patreon.
Pay us to listen.
BoardGameBarrage.com/Patreon or Patreon.com/BoardGameBarrage.
But that is not this episode. This episode is an episode where we are going to do what we are most inclined to do, which is look ahead, never look back to 2024, a great year of board games. There are 3 different fungus games coming out this year. That's how you know it's a good year. We will get to that in the second half of the episode. Before we get there, we should be talking about some of the games that we've been playing recently. And this week, those games are Savage Bowl, a trick-taking game, or Savage Bowl trick-taking game. Savage Bowl trick-taking game? Savage Bowl : trick-taking game.
Thank you, Nealon.
Trick-taking game. We're also going to be talking about Rear Window and Cuba. Let's start with Kellen.
So, I do think it's important to note that the name of this game is Savage Bowl : trick-taking game. Because you might be tempted to say that this game is just called Savage Bowl. You would be wrong. That is not how we refer to the game. Savage Bowl trick-taking game. This is, I think, and again, I don't keep up with the people who keep up. Do you know what I mean? I fear that people might think I keep up with all the things going on in these trick-taking worlds. But these people, it's all they think about. It's all they do. It's all they look at. But this is one that is sort of trendy-ish. The art, I can't really speak to what it is. Nealon, you said it sort of reminded you of Blood Bowl.
Yeah.
But are they all fish? Or they're like...
Well, I think in Savage Bowl, they're all like lizards. Is that right?
Yes, they're all lizards. That's right.
Yeah. But they're like, fantasy, anthropomorphized American football.
Oh,
basically.
this is bowl as in a bowl game like American football. I thought this was bowling. Right. I thought this was a bowling game. All right, okay, now I'm in.
Yeah, and you can get carded, Mark, in this game. Think about that.
Oh, okay.
So it is a 4 or 5 player only game, and we have only played it at 4. And it's one of those trick-taking games where you need to win an exact amount of tricks. If you go over, you bust, you get nothing, you lose, you're out. Good day, sir. But what makes it interesting is that in the first half of a round of Savage Bowl trick-taking game, you only win the trick if you have the second highest card. So the first half of the game, the referees are hawks. Okay. They're out there with their yellow card, and they're carding people. So if you play the highest card, you get a yellow card, and then the second highest person actually wins the trick. That serves 2 functions. One, the second highest card, right? You're sort of gaming that. But also the person who has a yellow card is not allowed to participate in the next trick, which is actually a good thing for the most part, I think, because you need to win an exact amount of tricks. And then once the game hits the halfway point, the refs are like, we want a good game. We need everybody to play.
So thematic.
And then from then on, it's the highest card that wins the trick. But again, in a 4-player game, you're looking to win exactly 3 tricks. If you win a 4th trick, you get none. You literally don't even keep playing. You're out for the round, which is hilarious, and you score 0 points. The game also rewards players for being the first to score the right amount of tricks, so you also want to try to win those early tricks if you can. And then the other little wrinkle that this one has is it has a chameleon card, which allows every player, 1 time per hand, can play a chameleon card to copy the color of the player before them, which is kind of fun in a trick-taking context because you can copy trump cards, which is one specific suit, in just a fun, silly way. It's sort of a get-out-of-jail-free card that I find quite good. Nealon, you have played Savage Bowl trick-taking game, : how does it stack up or compare to all the other trick-taking games that you love?
I quite like this. I think the thing that I have come to appreciate about the genre, as it were, is just the weird, quirky things that you can do with it. And this is that to the nth degree, right? You look at the rules and I don't get it, and then you start to realize why it works that way, and that's clever. Getting yellow carded feels bad until you realize, oh, I'm actually get rid of a card from my hand, and no one knows what that is. And there's lots of little clever systems like that kind of just start to make this feel very clever. The specific thing that I like about it is very much, I like a trick-taking game where you're trying to hit specific tricks. And that is exactly this. Like, it is so specific about what you're trying to hit. And up until you really get right until the end of the hand, there's this very, very tense back and forth as people drop out. And then you're left with, okay, who's going to be the person that, like, gets it here, that hits it here, and who's going to be the person that gets screwed. And I like that. That tension kind of doesn't really ever dissolve throughout the round.
Yep. I like this one quite a bit. I think some weirdness, it only works at 4 or 5 players. You know, I think that makes sense because people are being yellow carded for the whole first half of the game. And then the other thing I would say is it's sort of like that balance of winning tricks and then not wanting to win tricks reminds me of some of the fun of Wizard, where it's I need to win 2 tricks this hand, and you actually have 2 halves of the game to negotiate. Well, this might be good because it's sort of the second highest card in a color, and so it's going to be better in the first half of the game before these refs go away. I think that one of my hardest things to sort of say is if you're a trick-taking fan, you should, of course, try this. It's weird and fun and weird. And did I say it's weird? I mean, it has trick-taking game in the name of it. But it's sort of like if you're on the sideline and you want 2 or 3 trick-taking games in your collection, I feel like your best bet is to like sit out for 5 years, write yourself an email and say, check back in, you know, what are the 3 best trick-taking games in 2030? And then we'll have sorted through like idiots all of these games that have come out, and then you'll be the idiot that just gets the reprint of the best one. But it's a great game to have. Like, I'll bring this to Dice Tower West because it plays at 4 and 5. I think trick-taking game is a common language. We can all bust it out and try it relatively quickly. I struggle with my sort of, at the end of the year, burn down the collection and rebuild it thing. I'm like, can this survive? Could it survive? I don't know. It's so focused on 4 or 5 players. But again, it has trick-taking game in the name, which is at least 3 bonus points out of 10. That is my review of Savage Bolt trick-taking game, which currently in my scale has an 11 out of 10. So if you're paying attention, that was 8, but on account of the colon and the trick-taking game, up 2 for a total of, Nealon?
11.
Out of 10.
Well, let me throw a little knuckleball here to add another sport into the mix. But I don't see the colon on the box cover. So where does that fall? Because it seems to be part of the BGG listing, but not on the box cover. So can we really give it 3 points?
Well, there's some confusion because Savage Bowl is in all caps on the box cover. And Trick-Taking Game is in all lowercase.
Yeah.
So they're ignoring all elements of grammar, sentence structure, or, I don't know, a game title is not a sentence.
My argument here is that we should ding it 1 point and actually make it just a 10 out of 10.
Half a point? 10 and a half?
10, okay, we'll go 10 and a half.
I mean, retroactively, do I have to add half a point to every game with a colon in it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably.
100%.
Only half a point or like 1.5?
Depends on the capitalization situation.
Okay.
We'll do it on a case-by-case basis. That'll be a bonus episode. So for people who are thinking about being in the Patreon, you know, have that to look forward to. We're going through every game with a colon and ascribing to it some level of bonus points. So that'll be fun.
Listen, no one else will tell you about their unspoken biases. But I will tell you, if there's a colon in the game title, I love it. Okay? That's it. That's all there is to it. Savage Bowl, colon, trick-taking game. Absolutely worth trying. And one that I was excited that Nealon enjoyed more than I feared when we busted it out at game night together.
Do not use it as a primer to learn the rules of American football, though. I will say that. I didn't even play it, but based on your description of how it plays, it is not.
They never call anything in the last 2 minutes, Mark.
That's
How do you
true.
explain
That's
that?
true. I haven't seen many yellow cards, but maybe I'm just watching
Holding?
the wrong game.
Oh, yeah. I have been a ref, Mark.
I know
I
this.
have carded parents. I have red carded parents.
I love this.
Get the off my field.
I love it.
Okay? This is under 12s girls soccer. This is important. And you get out of here or your team's done.
I think that is a mark on how good your character is for you to have stood up to these people.
That's right. Parents are crazy. That turns people crazy. The crazy eyes.
Yeah.
Right. That's why Nealon
Yeah.
is the craziest of us all.
Yeah.
All the children.
All those
kind of the kids.
Little League games I've been to. Okay, I have been playing a game called Rear Window. No colon, so Callan, you can already dock that half a point in your mind if you need to. This is a game by Prospero Hall, which I'm still not entirely clear what that is, except a design coalition, presumably. And Funko, the publisher, which you can dock another half a point there, Callan, if you want to. Rear Window is based on the Alfred Hitchcock film, which I don't know anything about, so none of that will be relevant to this review. But the basic premise of this is that this is a Mysterium-like. I think that's an easy shorthand to start us off with. One player is the director. They have the knowledge. They have 4 residents out of the selection of 8. They have 4 attributes for each of these residents out of a large selection as well. Each resident gets an attribute and is assigned to a specific window. So 4 windows, that is what the director knows. Then, through a series of Dixit-like cards, Mysterium-like cards, if you will, that have a bunch of colors and images and these residents inhabiting them, they will lay out those cards to each of these 8 windows. If I said 4 earlier, I meant 8. Each of these 8 windows that will point you towards a resident and potentially one of their attributes. Is this resident the gardener? Are they a musician? And so on. And you, as the remaining players, I played this as a 3-player game, so it was 2 of us trying to get what the director was putting down, are trying to work out, okay, I think that Dean is pointing us towards the purple resident here. I think he's trying to imply that they're a musician. Therefore, I'm going to lock in resident, musician here, so on. You do that for each of the 8 slots, and then the director will give you your score out of 8 for that day, which in this case is day 1 of 4.
So sorry, when you say director, this game has someone playing as Alfred Hitchcock?
I think so, yes. I think presumably the director in this case is literally Alfred Hitchcock directing Rear Window.
That's
so it's a very
so meta.
Yeah, it really is. Here's where this gets interesting. That all kind of sounds a little bit blasé so far. Where this gets interesting is intermixed with those attribute tiles at the start of the game is one murder tile. And if one of the residents turns out to be the murderer, the game twists. Except you, the players, don't know this. It suddenly becomes a little bit of a hidden traitor game, and the director is actually working against you. What they are then trying to do is still get you most of the way towards a correct solution, but there's a very specific window. They want you to get 6, I believe, or 6 or 7 of the attributes right, but very specifically, they want you to get the murderer wrong. So there's this kind of like very delicate game where they're still trying to play a mostly cooperative game, but mislead you on one particular element. And now while that might seem like that was a very easy thing to like sort of get away with, there's a very delicate balance towards getting the players to that exact configuration. Because you sort of have to start laying those traps early, because by the time you get to day 2, day 3, day 4 of checking all your information, if they've been very deliberately misleading you down one path, it would be very easy to work out the maths and figure out, okay, but this specific thing doesn't add up, therefore there must be a murderer, and therefore we can figure this out. So the game sort of like hangs on this very delicate knife edge of you sort of working back and going, okay, well, no, he was trying to tell us this. Unless he's the murderer, then there was this, and this. And it kind of plays in your mind in both ways, because a lot of that could just be paranoia. You might not have a murderer in your game, but you constantly have that going in the back of your mind as you're trying to sort of get to the solution. And I found that tension really, really held up all the way through to the end of the game, to the extent that we were like convinced that it probably is a murderer. I just don't think he would have done this unless it was a murder. But then you're still trying to work out the crucial details of where he tried to mislead you to get the puzzle figured out. I thought that this was really, really clever. It's a neat twist on the genre, one that we've seen multiple games do Mysterium-likes and Dixit-likes in the past. But this one kind of felt pretty novel. I was pretty taken by it. I have one fear with this, which is, if I kind of maybe have alluded to this a little bit, it does feel like it might be fragile a little bit. It's hard to say that if there is maybe one specific way that a director with a murderer should play in order to lead people astray that just would break the game. We kept trying to work through it, and it didn't seem like it was necessarily broken, but we were like convinced that it wasn't, if that makes sense. But yeah, very, very, very interesting. I certainly want to play it more just to see if that will still hold up over multiple plays.
The sort of design by committee of Prospero Hall is so weird, right?
Yeah, it does make it very hard to parse out exactly like what the pedigree behind a given game is, which I think is partially the intent.
Yeah. Well, and they've, horrified, villainous, but then like some of these,
they've got
like,
a lot of big hits, yeah.
Back to the Future, Jaws, Bob Ross.
Totally. A lot of those weirdly good, though. Like, I think that
totally,
I've not played a lot of them, but I feel like I keep hearing that, hey, Jaws is actually really, really good. I think I played Pan Am and thought it was good. There's a lot of them just kind of feel like they have no business being good at all. They just turn out decent. Although now that I look down the list, like, there's a lot of sixes.
Well, I think this one sounds like exactly something I would want to try.
And I think you should. I think you should. I do think that it maybe leans a little bit harder into the deduction than you would like, because there is a very mathsy puzzle of trying to figure out okay, if this was a 6 here and a 7 there, therefore one of these must have been correct, but this one wasn't. I enjoyed that a lot. Like, I was playing this with Dan, and we loved that style of like puzzly game, so we were enjoying puzzling through it. It reminded me a little bit of Tragedy Looper, where you're really just working back through it and trying to figure out what all the possibilities are. But that element of like paranoia just added a whole nother layer to it, which I thought was really good.
So I have this game. I've had Rear Window for a little while now. I think I read the rules briefly at one point. But when I wanted to use this was like around non-gamers, like you said, like a Mysterium Light. But I'm a little worried that maybe it's too complicated for that level, you think?
It's not. Okay. It really isn't. It's about as complicated as you make it, I think. I think the thing that Dean, who was playing the director in the game we played, tried to stress is that in his experience, it seems very hard. Which, I would not say Mysterium is an especially hard game for the puzzlers to figure out. But I don't know if that's true in a general sense. But it did seem like it was perhaps a little bit more puzzly than Mysterium.
Okay.
But certainly from a rules perspective, not that complicated at all.
Sounds good.
And yeah, the production of this is also really, really lovely and sort of capturing that sort of, I'm going to say 50s. I don't know if that's exactly right, but that era in the way the art is all presented, like the graphic design. A lovely production. Rear Window by Prospero Hall and Funko. Mark, what have you been playing?
Yeah, I got a chance to finally play a game like Rear Window that I've had in my collection for a little while, but haven't played. This is Cuba, which was designed by Michael Rennick and Stefan Stadler, published by Rio Grande in the U.S. I didn't know this until I was doing my research for the episode, but Rennick and Stadler were also the team behind Pillars of the Earth, which is a game that came out in 2006, which is a year before Cuba from 2007. And it shares, if not the mechanisms of Pillars of the Earth, definitely the same vibe. Most recently, Rennick collaborated with another Stefan, this time Feld, on Merlin, so that's his latest design, or latest big design. One of the lesser Felds, in my opinion, but I'm not here to talk about Merlin, I'm here to talk about Cuba. So, Cuba is the latest in a long line of dusty old Euros that I've been playing and reviewing here on the show. Before I go on, I should mention that I played with the El Presidente expansion, which, from my research, I understand is pretty universally seen as a positive addition to the game, but keep that in mind. In Cuba, you play as a power broker in pre-Revolution Cuba. If you want to hear my take on Revolution Cuba, feel free to listen to my review on Cuba Libre. But here you are playing a rich person trying to gather up as much power and influence as possible in the form of victory points. The way you do that is through what I would have called action selection before looking it up, but I guess what Cuba does is more accurately known as variable phase order. Kellen, variable phase order is rearing its ugly head. Yes. So I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I do know what that means in Cuba is that every player starts out with an identical hand of cards, each of which allows you to take a specific action. So you have an architect card, you have a mayor card, everybody has the same hand of cards. And on your turn, you're going to play one of those cards and carry out the action, and then you can't select that card again until the end of the round when you pick up all your cards, sort of thing. You keep doing this until everybody has one card left in hand. The actions that you're taking sort of amount to what you would expect, like resource acquisition, resource conversion, contract fulfillment, standard Euro stuff for the most part. there's an interesting puzzle that you're going to face on your own private player board when it comes to reaping the different resources you can get in the game. So basically, you can build special buildings on your own private board, but when you do, you're going to cover up resource production spots. So you kind of need to figure out, it's like a little mini puzzle where you figure out which buildings you're building and where you're going to build them on your own board. That's sort of oversimplifying it, as there's like a bunch of little considerations that you need to make when it comes to this resource production and building. As you might have guessed, the building construction is key, as it allows you to have like your own private sort of ways of getting and converting resources and in general scoring victory points. So it's one of the ways you sort of find your own path to victory in the game, by building these buildings. So you're going to do all that, which is the meat of the game. And then you're going to be left with one card, because you play all but one card. And then you're going to transition to the second half of the game. So this is a 2-phase game, which people will know is my favorite types of games. And the second phase is the voting phase. So there's a touch of Lancaster here. At the start of every round, you're going to have 4 laws that are going to be up for voting at the end of the round. And each of the cards that you have in your hand, in addition to having the action that's associated with it, will have a number of votes on it. So, for example, if the last card I had in hand, the one that I didn't play, was my Architect card, which normally would allow me to build a building. If I don't play that card, I play it in this voting round, and I get the 3 votes that are printed on that card. And so every card has a different number of votes printed on it. Everyone secretly could add votes by contributing money in a blind bid. So I could supplement that 3 points of voting on my Architect card with some 4 money, and then I have 7 votes in this voting phase. Whoever has the most votes gets to pick 2 of the 4 laws to enact. And then, as in Lancaster, that will allow for different ways to score depending on the situation and the board state. And so you just do this 4 or 5 rounds, and at the end of it, you add a little bit of endgame scoring, and that's Cuba. That's how it works. So, as I mentioned, Cuba falls in the same category of games like the aforementioned Pillars of the Earth, like the other game I mentioned, Lancaster, Haunted Teutonica, El Grande, Caelus, the old school, dusty old Euro sort of thing. That said, I would not put Cuba in the same classes as those last 4 specifically. It's a fine game. It's very clean without feeling too sanitized, which was my problem with Orichalcum. It felt like too clean, too shaved down. The rules aren't overwhelming, though there is a little bit of passing the rule book around to figure out what the symbology on the buildings mean. Each building does its own thing, and they have symbols, and it can be a little unclear, at least early on. The game doesn't overstay its welcome, but it does feel a little bit on the long side. But more importantly, the biggest gripe I have is it doesn't have the same level of interaction that those last 4 games I mentioned do. And I think that's where the separation in terms of the level of quality between those games and Cuba pop up in my mind. It's not strictly head down. It's not like a strictly multiplayer solitaire situation, because you have that laws mechanism where you have to keep in mind what laws you want to enact and keep an eye on how much money each person has to contribute to voting. And also there's the building mechanism where there is a set number of buildings. And if you have a strategy in mind that requires a building, you need to keep that in mind and make sure to grab it before somebody else swoops it out from under you, because then you're out of luck. That El Presidente expansion also offers a little bit of interaction, as it puts some other action cards in a tableau, and players are allowed to pick one of those per round. So there's a little bit of a race element there that's added. But all in all, I'd say if you're looking for that dusty old Euro vibe, and certainly with the aesthetics of the game, you get that for good and ill, because you do have the lovely wooden bits that you do in a lot of the dusty old Euros. But the board is also, on the other side, full of different shades of brown. It's like a very monotone brown board. But if you want that kind of game or that experience, and you don't feel like having that much interaction, like you want to sort of do your own thing, like maybe a Lancaster light sort of feeling, then Cuba certainly works. I just don't think it rises to the heights of the classics of the age and genre. So that is Cuba by Michael Rennick, Stefan Stadler, and published by Rio Grande.
It's still pretty highly, relatively pretty highly ranked.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. For something that I had not heard that much about, it seems like it must have been like one of the, for lack of a better word, like staples or well-regarded games of its day.
Yeah, that is my understanding. A lot of these games, even though there weren't as many produced back in the day, they come and go, and you don't ever hear about them again. And Cuba has been on my radar for a while. And as I said, I traded for it a while ago and never got a chance to play it, and finally did. And yeah, like I said, it's solid. It has that interesting voting thing, but just not quite all the way up there. But solid for sure.
So I'm going to pin you down, Mark.
Yes.
Are you moving on from Cuba? This is leaving the collection. Like, you have a collection of, I don't know,
A lot of games.
800 games or more, probably. Something like that, I'm guessing.
Sure.
Based on, I have over 200 and they're all in one room. So you must have at least 800 because they're in every room.
Sure. Right.
Is Cuba one of the 800?
I mean, 800 is not like a high bar, so a lot of games that probably shouldn't be around are around. I'm very liberal with my assigning the for trade tag to my games on BGG, and Cuba certainly has been marked as for trade. So it is not one of the few games in my collection that I will not trade. So take that for what it is. That is to say, if you want to trade me something good for Cuba, send me a geek mail.
Nealon just gives me his games.
So, before we move on, one thing very important that's coming up that we love to do every year, this is definitely one of my highlights, is the Listener Top 20. So this is your chance to get your voice heard and submit your 20 favorite games. I will take all of that data across our entire submitted listenership and crunch the numbers, pull some things together, do some maths, plural, and get to the definitive list of Board Game Barrage's 2024 Listener Top 20. We'll go through those, we'll count them down, we will give you some extra extraneous data along the way. Love to do this. This is always great.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite episodes for a number of reasons that Nealon has already touched upon. But love seeing the evolution of our listeners' favorite games. That's always fun. And then obviously seeing all the fun things that Nealon does with the maths of the lists is always a fun little quirk. It's always fun to see which listeners, spoiler for those who haven't listened to previous top 20 listener lists, but Nealon will find the listeners whose lists most closely match our own top 50 list for each of us. So I always like to figure out who my allies are out there.
So yeah, if you're interested in submitting your list, which I would very much encourage you to do, if you've never ranked your games before, I can't recommend Pub Meeple enough as an easy way to do this. At the very least, if you just have a list of all the games you've played in recent memory, punch those in Pub Meeple, get like a rough ranking of all of your games. Send that list over to us by heading to boardgamebarrage.com/top20. There will be a form there. And here's where I get into the very important things I need to stress. I need you to copy and paste the name of the game from Board Game Geek when you add it to this list. Please do not write out any extraneous these, colons, extra punctuations, misspellings. Please just copy paste the name as it is listed on Board Game Geek. That will make my life approximately 23 times easier when I do all of this. So do that, add in the Google form at boardgamebarrage.com/top20 and look forward to that episode in the nearish future. Okay, let's get into the meat of this episode, which is going to be our most anticipated games of 2024. And we're not really going to do this as kind of a top list. I think we're just going to have this be a bit more of a free-form discussion about some of the things that we're interested in. Typically, we sort of go out and eliminate crossover, but I think there's enough stuff that we're like all collaboratively interested in that we can just turn it into more of a conversation.
People love lists, Nealon. Why wouldn't we do it like a list?
Why wouldn't we do it? Because, Callan, we are trendsetters. We are not going to do what the people want. We're going to give the people what they don't even know they want yet.
Wow, we're ahead of the curve.
Exactly.
Wow.
Seems like a risky play, but I'm all for it.
My number 5.
Oh, don't do that. Well, people will be very confused. Okay, I'm going to start off with a game that I don't know very much about, which actually might be a theme in this because a lot of these 2024 releases, some of them are obviously fully formed, but some of them are less so. And this is on the less so side. But I am excited about Cities for a couple of reasons. One is from Devere. I think Devere has a pretty good success rate as a publisher. Red Cathedral and other games that don't spring to mind right now, but that is something. However, the designers, okay, let me put to you two designers. One of them, Phil Walker Harding, been pumping them out.
End it there. Don't even need to know who the designer is.
Baron Park, Sushi Go Party,
Yes.
My favorite game, Silver and Gold.
Exactly. Classic.
Imhotep. Imhotep, criminally underrated.
I agree with that. I actually agree with that.
Criminally underrated.
that.
Big blocks.
Big blocks.
You want big
You
blocks?
want big blocks.
Imhotep.
But there's another person on the list of designers. a certain doctor. No, not that one. Dr. Steve Finn. He of Biblios fame. He whose hand I shook. I've shaken actually a couple times here, which makes sense given, how many copies of his game.
How much you've done.
Yeah,
for
exactly. But yes, no. Phil Walker Harding and Steve Finn come together to design cities from Devere. Okay, now I'm gonna be honest, because my journalistic integrity above all. I'm a little worried about the game because there's very little. Look, I trust it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. But if I was worried, the thing I'd be worried about is this is like a city builder, but not like a Civ city builder. It feels like it might be. Again, very little art, don't know, but from the description, it feels like it might be like put your parks next to your residentials and your commercials next to your factory sort of thing, which
that's fun.
That is fun. It has been a proven winner in a lot of games, but there are a lot of games that have that. So we'll see. But come on, Finn and Harding.
I trust both of those guys to give it an interesting twist. Absolutely.
Yeah. You expect it to be more than Shake the City. I like, but I just played it and it has the same thing as does Between Two Cities and all that. So it's a trope that's been used quite a bit. But yeah, like you said, I trust those guys to make unique. So Cities has to be on my list of games I'm looking forward to.
Are we journalists?
We are journalists. We get media badges. What does that mean?
Uh-huh.
Your badge.
You get content creator badges. I get media badges.
What? I don't remember that. I think I have multiple media badges in my collection.
Those are the rules. Is this okay? How did you find this?
Look,
is this anytime
I do not
Dr. Finn is mentioned on the internet, you get emails about
this
it?
This is what I thought.
Alerts.
This is the slander.
That's creepy.
This is the slander.
Are you a creepy person?
Look, I am friends with him on Facebook. But because we're friends, so that makes sense. That's what Facebook was intended
That sounds
to do.
exactly like a journalist. No, real question though.
Yeah.
Is this you keep up with Dr. Finn, you subscribe to him on BGG? Or you just knew that this was coming in the milieu?
No, I mean, to be totally frank, Dr. Finn has made a bunch of games and they're not all up my alley. So I don't keep that close tabs on his designs. But when it came to looking at like a list of 2024 releases, Phil Walker Harding, prolific and done a lot of good stuff. And then when you add him to Steve Finn, like I'm always going to be interested in what Finn creates. And so it just seemed like a really interesting combination.
Where did Dr. Finn last vacation?
I don't know. I know he, sadly, this might be breaking news to you guys, but broke my heart when I found out. But he has hung up his Ultimate Frisbee boots a couple of years ago. He was a prolific Ultimate Frisbee player and decided that time had passed. So,
and that disappointed
That
you.
did. I hate to see people have to give up other hobbies. What, you don't care? You're fine with it? Whatever? He has to move on?
I mean, I'm a journalist. I try my best not to care. So the first game that I wanted to talk about says it was released in 2023, but my God, I've been trying to buy this game. And in fact, I have bought this game and it is being shipped, but no one's got it. Vassal put it high on his party game list. This comes to us from Wolfgang Warsch, who has made very good party games. I would say very good. Wavelength and The Mind. He has also made party games like On a Scale of 1 to T-Rex that we don't need to talk about again, and a game called Subtext that we don't need to talk about again. He also made The Quacks of Quedlinburg, a game I don't care about, and I don't get why other people care about it, but if you like putting your pieces in acrylic, you can with The Quacks of Quedlinburg. But he has a game coming out called, and again, I think that it's a troll. I think that he's trolling with these names because The Mind, you just can't even. This game is called The Same Game. Does that sentence make sense to you? The name of the game is The Same Game, as in The Same Game. That's the
Very
game.
easy to Google that one, I think.
Have you guys heard about this?
I have heard about this.
I have not, no.
Okay, so it's hard to sort of explain, but there are different categories in each game. And so in one game of The Same Game, that's going to be fun. It's appearance, right? And then complexity of the structure, or importance for humanity, or duration of use, or weight. And so you have all those categories, right? And then you get a word, and you have to write another word that is linked to your word, but isn't your word, and that gets the group to guess which category it's not. As in, the example the rulebook gives is, because this is more complicated, it's hard to explain, is if you get the term yoga mat, you're trying to connect a word to yoga mat that is only like yoga mat in one of the 6 categories, right? And in this case, it would be refrigerator would be a good clue because it has a similar length to yoga mat, but it's different in its appearance, its importance to humanity, its material, its price, and its weight. And then the rest of the group is then going to try to uncover the categories that are not that shared category between the 2 words. And, it's like a co-op where you're just sort of guessing. It's like weird, but people really seem to like it. Tom Bassel quite liked it. I love party games, word association games, and anything that has you thinking and just a small twist on a way is like right there for me. So this one I have coming from a pre-order with Miniature Market. And in researching this episode, I would say that my excitement for this game was a 7 or 8 out of 10. And upon reading this review that I'm about to read you, it went from 7 out of 10 to 10 out of 10. Okay? And I don't know that I need to tell you that this is a 1 out of 10 review because it starts with the words absolute trash. Absolute trash. How on God's green earth am I supposed to know the frequency worldwide, how many there are in the world of a harp? Or how important to humanity a dog whistle is? And then within a few minutes come up with another word that doesn't fulfill the same abstract categories and allow my friends to correctly guess the trap category. Aggravated is the kindest feeling for this game. I don't think I've ever hated a party game as much as
That
this.
person sounds fun.
Just the how am I supposed to know the frequency worldwide of a harp is a discussion that me and my brother could spend an hour arguing about. Easily, that's 1 hour. And then we get to the next sentence. How important to humanity is a dog whistle? That could be all night.
Right.
Okay, the harp, I feel like an hour. Importance of dog whistle to humanity, I literally think that would be
Block
the whole
out the
game.
next couple days.
Like, it reminds me of the arguing that we will do in the best way when we're playing 6s. And so when I read this review, I was like, my God, I'm so excited for the same game by Wolfgang Warsch. Again, I don't think I did a great job explaining it because it's like one of those weird, it's just one weird thought away. I'll bet you in practice it's much easier to play than I'm explaining.
I, for one, am hoping you're getting it before Dice Tower West because I would love to play this.
It says it shipped. It says it shipped. So this is exactly what I mean. We don't need Pax Porphyrion. We don't need a Study in Emerald first edition because we could sit and talk about whether a dog whistle is important to humanity.
Absolutely. I want to be there. I want to be part of that conversation.
Absolute trash. The same game. I think that should go on the cover. That would make me more excited to buy it.
I also have a very different sort of silly little... I hesitate maybe to call this a party game, but certainly like a silly little game. But this was a Kickstarter that I missed, and it bums me out because I kind of think I would have backed it, called We're Sinking. It feels like a competitive/cooperative game, but it's described as a semi-competitive game, where the idea is that you are all trying to keep your pirate ship afloat. There is water coming in. There are little things you need to take care of. Everyone has a little action dial that's going to declare which of the actions to try keep the boat afloat they want to do. But you can lie at any point, put your action dial face down in the column, say, oh, I'm going to be the one taking care of this, don't worry about it. Everyone commits their dial, and then you reveal what all the dials are. And some people are just revealed to be taking treasure. Because at the end of the day, one person wins. There's a couple of different ways that the game can end, I understand, depending on whether the boat sinks or gets attacked or something like that. But it is at the end of the day just whoever has scrabbled to keep themselves ahead of everyone else. So it feels like that sort of silly, fun game where you're like lying, bluffing, manipulating people, very social, very interactive, very, very fun. And if you take a look at it, it's just got such a lovely, vibrant look to it. It's got, this adorable little ship mini that sits in the middle. I don't think that really does a whole lot except exist as a ship mini. But regardless, this just feels like a very fun, interactive, light game, which is the sort of thing that I feel like we would absolutely go for. My one worry for this is that it is maybe a little bit long. I'm seeing it listed as like 45 to 90 minutes, which kind of feels like about twice as long as a game like this should be. But interested to see like how that pans out.
Just in my 1 minute of research on this, the thread on arguing whether it's a semi-co-op or not has come to the forefront, which again is something else I love to participate in, where the publisher says it's semi-cooperative and then someone else is saying, actually it's not, and filed a correction with BGG, and now the publisher is arguing with them, and the game is not semi-co-op. It's a game with two different ending conditions determined late. They give a winner according to two different sets of rules, depending on whether the ship is sinking or not sinking. I love this.
Yeah, it definitely seems like something that we would get a kick out of.
Totally. It's funny because it kind of reminds me of Lifeboat in the sense that
I had the same thought as well.
Probably more fun than it is good.
Exactly.
But that we would have a great old time doing this. Yeah, let's do it. You get this? Where?
I did not. Pre-orders are open. Is something I discovered today, so I will likely pre-order it, but I have no idea when that's intended to arrive. Presumably not before Dice Tower West, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So another game on my list has to do with another duo of designers. This is the latest in the Key series. This game is called Keyside, which means it's a Richard Breese design. He of Keyflower and Keydom and all the Key games. But the co-designer here is David Turtzi. So that's an interesting co-design. One of the new big Euro designers. I have to say that the Turtzi edition does a little bit worry me because I feel like his games are a little sterile.
I'll be honest, actually. I've turned on Turtzi a little bit. It used to be something that would excite me when I saw his name in a box, and I kind of have also turned on that a little bit. But his games are interesting. Right. I'll give you that.
And so the other thing about it is that what Keyside appears to be is sort of, and again, it's scant information on this, but from what I understand, it's like Keyflower, but with dice. And so I would assume that's a Turtzi part of it, the dice, because he has a lot of games with like dice manipulation and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that seems interesting. It seems, from what I understand, it keeps that whole, there are dice of different colors, and if you bid on something with the red die, now they're all being bid with red dice, which is, I'm not the biggest fan of Keyflower. I know Kellen is a bigger fan of Keyflower than I am, but I always have liked that bidding system. And so if that keeps that bidding system, but with dice, seems like an interesting potential game to look at.
Do you think that Breese has just thought now, I can't believe I went all in on keys?
Well, I mean,
kind of like Friedman, Friesa, and the green. Does that define?
I mean, he's got plenty of chance. He had plenty of chance to move on, and he has other games that are not keys, but
yeah, but he's doing the opposite, right? Because he made the old Aladdin's Dragons,
right?
Which is a pretty seminal work. I think I haven't played it, and then he re-released it as Keydom's Dragons.
Right. So he
doubled down.
Yeah. So obviously he does not regret it. But yes, the Key series. And the latest one that I'm interested in is Keyside.
I have a couple of just fastball down the middle. I think the first one, and again, I always don't know whether I should include it, but Arcs, there's plural, is coming out. I had a chance to play this last year, the final full first game or the non-legacy game. Was delightful. Excited to check out more. I think the sort of premise of Oath, except you only have to play 3 games and each game is shorter, is very strong. It's very Nealon. How would you rank my commitment to legacy games?
Very low. I would say that of 50% of the legacy campaigns I have started, they have stopped because Kellen has rapidly lost interest.
And one day you'll thank me for that. It doesn't sound
Kellen,
like we're there yet.
One more game of Charterstone. One more game.
Nealon, Charterstone? You wanted that to be what we finished together?
I am actually very excited for Arcs. I mean, for people that listen to the bonus episode, I just spent a large chunk of the time ranting about Cole Worley and John Company. But Arcs is premise-wise, designer removed, geared to excite me. 4X space game with a campaign structure woven into it. I want to play that for sure.
But that's only 3 games long. That's
3 games long.
That's because we could do that. We could, in one long day, you could do that. Or
we could just abandon it 2 games in.
Well, that would depend on if I'm winning, probably.
I guess, yeah.
But I would say that of the games in the world, this amongst hobbyists, okay, because this is not new Jenga coming out, most anticipated. I would say Arcs has got to be in the top 2 or 3, but I do think it's also like imminently delivering. I know I got in on the Kickstarter, which again, Neil and I agreed to never back the same project, and then I betrayed him because I made a promise to one Mr. Worley that I would back it.
This does seem like one where we slip. One I actually can't remember that we did slip on that is in a similar vein for me is Mordred. Did you end up backing that?
No, I let you. I got Cyclades and you got Mordred.
Oh, that's right. I remember. We did actually come to a good agreement on this one. Which, yeah, Mordred I do have on my list. This one's harder for me because this doesn't have the Eric Lang pedigree of the big new CMON miniatures game. But it does have the Adrian Smith doing the art and the theming and like the graphic design of it. So it's going to feel, I think, in line with Rising Sun and Ankh and, you know, those games. But this one is themed around Arthurian legend. And the design pedigree on this one is one of the designers of Hyperborea, which is a game that I liked a lot and I would have loved to have returned to. So there's definitely something there. This is the big new CMON Miniatures area control game that is going to be coming out this year. So, you know, I'm definitely excited for it. I don't know a whole lot. I didn't go all in on knowing everything about this like I did with Rising Sun, or even on backing all in, because I'm never doing that with a CMON game ever again. But yeah, I'm definitely excited to see what this one's all about.
This is like, for me, one of those lose-lose situations, because if it's so good, surprise hit, what am I going to do? Because you have it, and I've only got Cyclades Legendary Edition. But if it's bad, then I feel bad for you because I bullied you into letting me pick Cyclades.
Exactly. I will say this, of the two games, this would be the one that would make sense to back because, you know, I have a history of having played a lot of Rising Sun with a specific group of coworkers. So there will be group excitement to at least try this, even if it doesn't hit. I also, like I said, I didn't go all in on it. So I do feel like a little bit less pressure to be like, oh man, this is the one that has to hit really, really big.
How does it feel to like the worst of the Eric Lang games in that genre?
Pretty good. Again, I'm sort of leading the listeners where one day they will realize that Blood Rage is mid and Rising Sun is the true king.
Just, can you say for us, I hate Chaos in the Old World, and then retire from podcasting because of the pitchforks?
I love Chaos in the Old World.
Oh, you liar.
I do. I genuinely do. Actually, I mean, probably if I had played Chaos in the Old World more, I think that would easily be in my top 50, but I've still only played it once. And
you horned rat.
It's Warhammer, man.
That's true. Yeah, I forgot that angle.
Rep.
So this is a game I think is on a lot of most anticipated lists, but I can't help but be intrigued by Civolution. This is the massive Stefan Feld Civilization game. I don't know where this goes. I don't know if I end up liking it or not. So this is not a guaranteed hit, but this seems like a departure for Feld based on the pictures and a little bit of descriptions. There's still a lot of Feld stuff going on. There seems to be like a color aspect where certain colors go with certain actions, but it does seem quite heavy. I guess the preliminary weight rating on BG is 4.5, which is crazy. I mean, I assume that's going to get down a little bit because that 4.5 would make it one among the heaviest games out there. But just really interested to see what both Feld designing a really heavy game and like a Civ game, because it does look like a Civ game in the way that I think most people would have envisioned Civ games, where it does seem like tech trees and like a large map and stuff like that. So I'm just curious to see what Feld's heavy Civ game looks like. So Civolution.
Yeah, the thing I've heard, and a lot of this is all like mostly speculation and hearsay based on like a small number of like SN reviews that was probably hard to get actually into. It is like not quite all the way 4X, but near enough. You know, which is interesting.
Yeah, from Feld especially.
It's very interesting. Yeah, exactly. I wanted to call out a couple more things of mine that are not necessarily things that you wouldn't have heard of yet, but I am definitely excited for. Undaunted 2200 Callisto, the next big Undaunted game. If you told me, hey, Undaunted but not World War II themed, instead sci-fi with mechs, that is exactly what I wanted. That is exactly what I want.
Except for it needs anime, probably.
Anime.
You love it more.
Exactly. Just anime the shit out of it, and then we'll get back to me, David Thompson. But no, this looks cool. Like, for some reason, I thought that they were going full whole log miniatures for this, but this does feel like they're sticking to the Undaunted tokens and, presentation and production, which I'm perfectly okay with. This is at a higher price point, closer to like Stalingrad, which makes me wonder if it has a similar sort of campaign structure built into it. I don't know. Details on this are a little bit thin, but I'm very excited by the premise of this. Spectral is a lovely little deduction bluffing game coming from Bitewing and designed by Ryan Courtney of Pipeline and Trailblazers. And the whole premise here is that you're moving through a mansion trying to figure out where all the gems are by placing your treasure hunters adjacent to tiles. And you get to like peek at a card, and you can kind of use that to determine whether you're going to be bluffing and where to put your treasure hunters to mislead other players. And then you have a big reveal of the whole map at the end, and then whoever has the most treasure hunters near their gems gets the most points. So a little bit of deduction, a little bit of bluffing, social play. Sounds really, really clever. Quick, lovely little game. And then one other that's kind of like a wild card for me, because there's not a whole lot about this. This was a failed Kickstarter, unfortunately. There is talk that this is going to be relaunching soon, but that makes it very potentially unlikely that will hit in 2024, is Cysmic. That's Cysmic. And this is kind of like a miniatures war game that I'm seeing people describe as very like RTS StarCraft adjacent. So I have a suspicion that Kellen and I would probably have like a good time with this, just throwing people at each other, Space Marines across the table. Yeah.
So I'm going to do my rapid fire real quick because it's probably going to bore most people, but a trio of GMT games that I'm interested in. Red Dust Rebellion, I've mentioned before, but this is designed by the person behind 3 Minute Board Games, the YouTube channel. And this is a coin game set in the future, which is unusual. Usually coin games are based in some historical time period or event, and this is a departure, so I'm interested in that, Red Dust Rebellion. Another coin adjacent game, but this is called a Gest or a Gest. I'm not sure. It's Gest of Robin Hood. So this is not a coin game, but this is like a new series of coin offshoots, which is interesting. So this is interesting because it's like a coinish game based on literature, but also a new series which are called the Irregular Conflict series. So just offshoot to coin. So I'm interested to see what that even looks like. And then finally, the successor to Churchill, which is a 3-player game, a game called Congress of Vienna, is a game that I'm very interested in. Masters of the Universe sort of thing, where you're sitting down based on, I think this is Napoleon trying to reconquer France, and this is big powers trying to deal with that. So 3 historical or historical adjacent games that I'm interested in.
The last 2 that are on my mind, Cthulhu Dark Providence, which is a Study in Emerald 3rd edition, for those paying attention. I love Study in Emerald 2nd edition. I have high hopes to play 1st edition. The main criticism of 2nd edition is that it got rid of some of the wacky chaos from 1st edition, and it seems like one of the design goals of the 3rd edition is to keep it streamlined but introduce some of thatness back into it. I would say there are ups and downs to this new version, but I look on it and I want to know how it shall be. The other one that I am excited about, and I can't believe I late-backed it, but I'm imagining a Christmas. Imagine a Christmas. I know it's February. Imagine a Christmas where Kellen is with his brothers, and we are playing 3-player Slay the Spire, the board game. This is a wonderful roguelite, like, I never know that genre, I don't care, deck-building card game that has been turned into a board game. But, again, you kind of see, well, that can't be good. That can't be good, right? They're going backwards. But it's made by the people who made Imperium the Contention, a game that we all liked enough, or thought was good, or thought was interesting. I just can't get my brothers to play games with me as much as we used to, and I would not leave the Switch alone playing Slay the Spire. They were just, one of them was watching the other one play Slay the Spire over Christmas. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, now I have the $200 board game that takes 4 times as long with as many components, but we can all play it together. So I don't know if I'm delusional or I'm already thinking about Christmas, but listen, that's what's happening this year. Slay the Spire, the board game. A co-op adaptation. Oh, adaptation. Why did I back this?
Kellen, you're telling me that a game that you don't have on your list is one where you explore a book of maps, work your way through an adventure book to complete quests, solve puzzles, defeat gym leaders, earn enough badges to become a fully licensed RoboMon Ranger and win the game?
World? What the are you talking about?
RoboMon.
This isn't real.
This is very real.
Actually, that could be a good strategy, is just make Pal World the board game and make a bunch of money. Wow, this looks cute. But it's a campaign, you said?
Yeah, I think it's more like a solo-ish
story. Okay,
type.
but it's
Yeah.
cute. Okay,
It
but
is
the
very,
one
I mean, look, it's very Pokemon coded, obviously.
coded. That's a
Yeah.
good word for stealing, which I won't get into because I work in gaming. There is a game that we're all excited about, I would guess, and we haven't uttered the name of it. So we'll, on countdown from 3, we'll say it. We'll whisper it. 3, 2, 1. Cascadero.
All things.
Neil!
Ruined it again.
Sorry, I genuinely didn't know. Even though we spoke about this before, it entirely
Wait, what
slipped
did you
my
say?
mind. I said Old King's Crown because I had no idea.
That looks cool, too,
That
by
Old
the
King's
way.
Crown does look cool.
That's how you know we do this live. We never go back to make ourselves sound better or worse, and Mark, just turn up your audio because you did whisper Cascadero, though I do think it may have been 1 second fully after me, so if you want to just move your audio up.
Mark, just edit Cascadero.
Okay,
and
gotcha.
just slide that in there.
Yeah. Reiner Knizia has a new tile-laying epic sort of game. It comes to us from Bitewing, who are smart people. They know what they're doing. I think that the uphill battle, Cascadero has beautiful art, first of all.
Yeah.
Very inspiring cover. But it is in a genre with a designer, Reiner, who has made, certified bangers, Tigris and Euphrates, Yellow and Yangtze, Samurai, Through the Desert, Babylonia, and Blue Lagoon. And, you can't f*** around with that. And they are around with that. And again, they got Reiner himself around with that, but it is at that place where I can't keep all of them. I can't do it. They're on top of each other. The tiles they're laying on top of each other. And so will this one dethrone one of them? Samurai, we've got it for the tryhards. Through the Desert, we got it for the people who like Go. Blue Lagoon, we got it for the people who aren't smart enough to play Babylonia. Yellow and Yangtze, we got it for the people who don't like the competition of Tigris and Euphrates. Tigris and Euphrates, we got it for the people who love So Very Wrong About Games. We have all of the etymologies here. Who is Cascadero for?
Maybe it's for us.
Maybe it's for us to champion. That's hopeful,
That's what
Mark. We
yeah.
end it there. That's
I
hope.
bring in the hope.
We are going to end it on a hopeful note. Thank you all so much for listening to the Board Game Barrage podcast. Please let us know what you're looking forward to. I think one of the ways that we do love to find out about games that are not necessarily on our radar is through you lovely listeners, especially via the Discord, which you can head to if you're not already a part of the lovely community over there at boardgamebarrage.com/Discord. Chime in the podcast channel. Tell us the games that you are excited about in 2024, and we will late back them regretfully. That is it. Thank you all for listening. Thank you to Heart Society for our intro and outro music. What's in Your Mind, Kid? Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye. I know we're at the end of the long record when Nealon won't defend Blue Lagoon. He's like, I'm done. F*** it.